I'm Craig Beaumont Flynn. Welcome to Beyond the Design, a show that gives you a peek behind the curtain of the design industry and shares the stories of those that are the driving force behind it. Well, welcome to Beyond the Design. Today we have Jay Jeffers. Hello, Jay. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Well, why don't we just start off and you can share your journey and how you got involved in the interior design field.
Sure. This is, next year will be 25 years for my own business, but this is a second career for me. I have a degree in international business and marketing. Didn't really know what my path was going to be, but I kind of got into marketing advertising when I was in school and thought, okay, that's a way I can be creative, but also be in the business world, that sort of thing. So I thought I was going to have my own ad agency, and I grew up in Texas, and I moved to San Francisco in my 20s because, I was going to get out of Texas. I knew that, but also San Francisco was sort of like a hotbed of incredible advertising. You know, Foot Cone and Belding was doing Levi's, and Goodby Silverstein was doing the Got Milk, and all of those things were happening in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So I moved here, ended up working for a small ad agency, and then ended up working for the Gap in their corporate headquarters in advertising. But my job wasn't so creative. I was more in the media relations world. And I was kind of trying to find my path. I was like, I wanted to do something for a living that I love to do. I did not want to be one of those people that couldn't wait for Friday or for the weekend because they didn't want to be at work, kind of a thing. And I went through, this is going to age me because there was no internet. I went through a course schedule actual catalog and took and there was an introduction to interior design class starting the next week through Berkeley Extension. And there was space in the class, and I took the class, and it was the first time I thought, I think I can make a living doing something that I enjoy doing. And I think I might be kind of good at this. And went and I had a very cool boss at the Gap at the time. We were working on the Old Navy division, had just started. We were in media relations for that, and we needed to bring more people on. So I told her I was going back to school. I was going to change my life, but could I cut down my hours here and help train my replacement for a year or for a little while I'm getting my feet wet? So I ended up working for the Gap part-time. I ended up going to school at night. I ended up working for a one-man design firm in San Francisco for a little bit, all those simultaneously. And this was right at the beginning of the very first .com boom. And Richard Witzel was my mentor who I worked for. And I ended up going to work for him full time and took his business to the next level. And I think when I left, he had 10 people and was a thriving firm. And then in 1999, I went out on my own and started my own thing.
Wow. Quite the career. It's fascinating to me because a lot of the designers that I've talked to in the past year, their first career was something completely different. And they just kind of fell into it because they wanted to be more visual, more hands-on, more inspiring, visually and creatively. And they all fell into interior design.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know if I'm the same, but I sort of, growing up in Texas, architecture was a career. Mm-hmm. And actually, when I was younger, I thought I was going to be an architect at one point. But interior design wasn't really something that I knew anything about. I didn't know anybody who's had an interior designer. My mother did all of our decorating with my help, of course, and I think all of my friends' mothers decorated their homes instead of having an interior designer to help. So it was sort of like a new thing when I was like, oh, this is something that somebody does for a living that helps people make things beautiful. So
is there a Jay Jeffers aesthetic or curated design that you kind of follow through and sell your clients, or is it more about the client's location, their lifestyle? How do you infuse your design aesthetics?
It's a little bit of everything. I always said that I don't really have an aesthetic, but that's actually not true. I have a little bit of a look. I do enjoy some color and some pattern and that sort of thing, but I also enjoy doing neutral things in terms of interior design. I just don't get hired for those things very much. But I've always said the most important thing is the client. And then architecture and geographic location all play into it. I'm going to do, even for the same client, I'm going to do a very different project in a city that I might do in the Napa Valley or on a beach because it's just a different way of living. It's just a different aesthetic, that sort of thing. Right. But I've always loved the sort of collected feeling in a home. Like I want a home to feel like when you walk in that you've been collecting things for years, even if that's something that I help a client do, over the year of a project or 2 years or 5 years of a project. I want it to feel immediately collected over time. I think art is super important. Accessories are super important. Having those special things that tell a story about your life is very important for every client. So that's a running theme that's throughout the projects, whether they are, a lot of color or a little bit of color or very sort of maximalism, or I'm not really a minimalist, but in my world, minimalism is maybe 3 books on the cabinet instead of 1 book on the cabinet or something like that.
So what are some of the key factors you consider when designing a space to ensure functionality and aesthetics? You talk about art and other things. So what's your process in that?
I'm very involved in the function of it. I think about how a person lives, how a family lives, if it's a family, what the room is and how it's going to function. Do you need, seating in a family room for 4 people, or do you need it for 12? When your kids are young and they're going to become teenagers soon, do you want all the kids to come to your house? Which so many of my clients say, I want all the kids at our house, or do you want the kids to go, you want the kids not at your house, and sort of planning for those kind of things and the functionality of all of that. I'm so sort of very specific on how high an ottoman is next to a chair, or how high the coffee table is in the living room and that sort of thing. So it's always something I pay very much attention to, whether it's designing something from scratch from the ground up, or if it's remodeling. Is it, I've always thought getting the bones of the place right is the most important thing before you decorate. So I will say over my 25 years, I've come into clients' homes and said, like, I know we weren't thinking about this, but what if we move this wall this way? And what if we do this? It's going to change this in this way. And most of the time, my clients will do it. And so we'll get the bones right so that the flow of the house feels good and feels energetically proportionate and that sort of thing, and then decorate. And the decorating is obviously comfort plays a factor into it. These days, many years ago, my clients we used to go to all the showrooms and sit in everything and sit test it all. And these days you just don't have that. People don't have the time to do it, but also showrooms aren't quite as robust as they have been in the past. And the piece may not be on the floor. So the question I always get from clients is it comfortable? So we play the comfort factor take the comfort factor very seriously with clients and make sure that it's all going to sit well and that sort of thing.
Do you feel like you challenge yourself? You take risk in your design?
Oh, always. Yes. Yeah. I really feel like in a way that's my job. Like, most people these days, especially these days, you can see everything everywhere. You can go on Instagram, you can go on Architectural Digest online, all the magazines, all the everything, and really see everything. So clients are coming to us these days having seen all of that and saying, this is what I like. These are the things that I sort of gravitate towards. But what they don't know is there is a world of other ideas, other furnishings, other light fixtures, other rugs, other things out there. So I will always sort of, give a client what I think they want from my perspective, but also challenge them. And say, I know you might not have been thinking about this, but what if we laid out this room this way? And what if we put this amazing mural on the ceiling so that when you're dining and you look up, the ceiling sparkles or something like that. And people come back and forth. It's I think what's my track record? I think my track record is probably 80% of my ideas get approved. Some of them, I will admit, I hope none of my existing clients, but once in a while, I'm sort of like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. I think it's going to work, so I'm just going to go for it, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure it works, and it always does. But once in a while, I'm sort of like, is this gonna work the way I think it's gonna work? I hope
Oops,
so.
I gotta prove it now.
Especially when the client says yes, then I'm like, oh God, they said yes.
So, what motivates you and inspires you as a designer and creative visionary?
so many things. I mean, travel definitely, I think, is a way for different ideas and originality to come out. It's very easy to be on. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love going down a Pinterest rabbit hole with my coffee on a Sunday morning and pinning crazy things. Or if I have an idea, seeing what, other people might have come up with the same idea. But it's very easy for that to be ingrained into your head. So I think that traveling is a way of seeing things that are historical and different and interesting. And whether it's, touring beautiful villas and homes and things like that in other places, or whether it's being at a gorgeous luxury new hotel or what. I feel like traveling is the place that I get the most sort of original inspiration these days. But it's everywhere, I love going to shows. I was just at Maison Objet in Paris, which I haven't done in years, and is always it always seems so tedious, but I always come out of it incredibly inspired because there are new fun things to see. It's interesting. It's amazing what people are coming up with, and also taking that leap of establishing themselves and getting a booth at Maison Objet or wherever it is, and selling it.
We're going to pause for a moment
because passionate about something.
So
I love all the shows too and those sort of things.
I was thinking about going in January. Is it January? Isn't it? Yeah, I was thinking about going in January. But that's going to be awfully cold.
Yeah. Yeah, January is very fun. I did that for many years, and Deco Off, it's become such an event now. My two principal designers that work for me go pretty much every year, and I sort of feel like I've kind of handed that torch, go enjoy. But some of the tours, I'm very jealous of some of the tours and things that they see. There's a lot of access from vendors and fabric houses and things.
So you mentioned you have a staff of 2 that go to Paris every year. How big is your staff?
I have 12 people. I have 2 principal designers that have been with me for a long time, and an amazing senior project manager who's been with me for a long time, and designers and other project managers and junior staff underneath that.
So that's a lot of juggling.
It's a lot of juggling, but you know what? It's a great team. It's I'm happy to say that we don't have a lot of turnover. People enjoy working. In fact, during the pandemic, we had to have people stay away because I think people really wanted to come into the office, which I thought was kind of crazy, but I welcome it.
They love you, Jay. They want to be with you.
Well, I wasn't there.
Oh.
But it's a great team. It's there's a lot of creative energy. I bought a warehouse building just on the outskirts of the Tenderloin in San Francisco in 2007. So big open floor plan and big skylight. So there's lots of natural light, and it's a great place to come to work. So I understand why people would want to come in, but it's very everyone is involved. It's we kind of have a no drama workplace where if there are issues, we figure out the issues. We all, kind of work things out together and have a great team. And if mistakes happen, they happen. Own up to it. We fix it. We move on. This is not, brain surgery. This is not rocket science. It's design.
Right.
Our job is to make people happy. So I have a great team.
Well, congratulations to you to opening a New York office. When was that started?
That was this year. I selfishly I've never lived in New York, and growing up in Texas, you're sort of always taught that New Yorkers are crazy when you're from Texas. Right. And I think I went there for the first time my sophomore year in high school. And I was like, this place is great. I don't know what people are talking about. So I'd always planned on, and I love the theater and that sort of thing. So I really was drawn to that. So I'd always planned on living there, and moving to San Francisco, I got a job. I moved to San Francisco thinking 2 or 3 years, and then I'm going to go to New York and try New York, and then maybe LA, and then I'll figure out where I really want to live. And, I moved to San Francisco, got a job, fell in love, that whole thing, and then went back to school. So New York never materialized as a place to live. And it's funny, I've told so many friends that I'm going to live there someday. last year I was at a friend's house over Thanksgiving in the Hamptons, and I just sort of had it ingrained in my head that I needed to buy a place in New York in order to move to New York. And my friend was like, why don't you rent something for a year? Like literally looked at me like that with his eyebrows furrowed and said, why don't you just rent something for a year? And it was as if as if it was a brand new concept for me. And I was like, oh, rent something for a year. What an idea. So I was there in January the following year, this year, and decided to start looking for a place, thinking that it was going to take me 6 months. And every time I come into town, I'll just look at a few more places. And then when I see the one that's my apartment, I'll know. And the second apartment I looked at is the apartment that I'm in right now in the West Village. So saw the apartment, and the intention was find a place to live, open an office. So the office is in my living room of my apartment right now. And at the same time, Jamie Drake is a very good friend of mine. And I saw him right around the time I rented the apartment and told him about the apartment. And he was like, so, Kips Bay Show House is coming back to New York this year and you're going to do that, right? Right? It's like, that's a great idea. Absolutely. So agreed to do the Kips Bay Show House as well. And that kind of was my kickoff to the New York office, and had a great time doing that with a lot of great designers. Super fast turnaround, but really it was kind of like a great introduction to New York. I've done projects in New York before, but always for like my clients here that are buying pied-à-terre and that sort of thing. So it was a fun thing to do, and I'm excited to be in New York a little bit more.
So is it most your projects residential?
Everything is residential. I've done a couple of things. Like I own a hotel in Healdsburg that I designed the entire thing. So that was my first hospitality project. I've done a couple of bars here in San Francisco. I have a good friend who owns a beautiful spa here, and I've known her for 25 years, and I've designed and redesigned and remodeled her spa and several homes for her over the years. So those are my few little forays into non-residential work. Everything else has been residential.
So doing the Kips Bay, is that coming from the advertising marketing field initially? Do you believe that's a good marketing tool for designers to participate in local show houses?
Absolutely. I think it's great. I think it's one of those things that, you never know. Somebody may see something right then and hire you 2 months later because they happen to be buying a home and happen to love what you've done in this one. But sometimes it's 5 years later. I definitely can remember people saying, I saw that show house you did. I also saw, my friend also hired you and I love her house. So it's always that sort of, there's a connection.
Correct.
I think I've been very lucky. There were a couple of show houses I did in San Francisco where the house was on the market, and two of them, the person that bought the house hired me to do the rest of the house. I think that's very rare. And in fact, the first one, they didn't hire me for my room. They hired me for something else that they'd seen. And they were like, we didn't like that room that you did, but we're hiring you for something else.
So how do you balance your time between coast to coast?
I kind of look like my original plan was I'm going to be a week in New York and then I'll be 3 weeks here and then we'll see how it goes. And I was hoping I would be able to say like, okay, first week of the month, every month or something like that. But that has not worked. But we're in the midst of a bunch of projects in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, but also in Carmel Valley and Tahoe and other spots. So, and we're between August and the end of the year, we're installing, I think, 4 or 5 projects. So I find myself here in San Francisco a lot right now. And I think next year it'll slow down a little bit. And we're still going to be very busy in the beginning of the year. And then I hope that some of the new projects are in the New York area as well.
So 25 years, which is a phenomenal span of a career in this industry. Is there one particular project that you can think of this is my legacy, or have you not reached that point yet?
Oh gosh. I don't think so. I don't think I've done some incredible projects in my time, but nothing that I think, this is my legacy. This will be something that people are talking about, 10, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years from now. My Brooke Astor library, as I sort of always aspire to, like, okay, what's the iconic room going to be in this house, or what's the iconic, thing going to be about this project? And I always think about Albert Hadley and that Brooke Astor Red Lacquer Library. So yeah, no, I've had some great projects, but I don't think that the hotel is probably, the Madrona is a hotel in Healdsburg that I saw during the pandemic, and with no intention of purchasing it. It just happened to be empty because it was closed. A good friend of mine who I did his home in San Francisco as a real estate agent, he was about to put it on the market. It was Memorial Day weekend. We were doing absolutely nothing. He's like, come see this hotel. And it's this magical little place in Healdsburg, California, on 8 acres up on a hill. It was a private estate that was built in 1880. And it was a private estate for 100 years and then converted into a bed and breakfast inn, and was in need of some love. And I honestly left there thinking, okay, I'm going to come up with a fantastic design for this. And whoever buys it, I'm going to get an introduction by my real estate agent friend, and they're going to hire me to design it. And slowly but surely, some consultants and people and things came into my being, and my brother's in the real estate finance world, and he started helping me and ended up becoming a partner with me. And my other partner was in the hospitality industry, but it was a personal friend that happened to be living with me during the pandemic because he just had moved back to San Francisco in like February of 2020.
Wow.
And we were in the Napa Valley. So slowly but surely purchased the hotel with a bunch of investors as well, and started remodeling it in 2021 and opened it in 2022, April 2022. And, it was one of those it was meant to be kind of things, because I had time to work on it. If it had not been a pandemic, Memorial Day weekend, I'm sure I would have been having a party or out of town or something. I probably would have never seen the hotel. It probably would have been one of those things that I had no time to design or come up with ideas. And I pretty much designed the entire thing on my dining room table at my house in St. Helena, California, up in the Napa Valley, and just had the most magical experience doing it. It was so fun. It was, well, for one thing, I didn't have a client. That was kind of wonderful. But I also didn't have a client budget. But, I came up with ideas and concepts and played and sketched and drew and reached out to friends like Javier Robles from Lumifer Lighting, because I had this idea for a chandelier, but I could never have afforded, one of his fixtures for the dining room. And he said, your timing is perfect, because I've been wanting to do a hospitality line, and this is the perfect foray into it. He created, this line, these beautiful fixtures for the hotel. And I had a few friends like that helped, and, that I basically begged, borrowed, and stealed, and said, please, you have to do this for me. So it was an incredible experience. And I think that will be, I don't know if that's my legacy for the rest of my life, but I'm pretty proud of it.
Sounds like all the stars aligned, timing and everything else.
Yeah, they really did.
So is there anything in particular that you want to achieve, or you still want to do, or try your hand out?
I love fabrics, and I don't have a fabric line. I haven't gone down that road, but that's I feel like I've always kind of started with fabrics, even more so than furniture or rugs or anything else. I've always been drawn to them and love I don't do it so much anymore, but I used to love going to the showrooms and go through all the wings and get new fabrics and see what's new and different and that sort of thing. But so I would love to have a fabric line. I think that would be fun and interesting and really great.
I think a lot of designers also want to do a book, and you've accomplished being published twice.
Yes.
How was that process? And did you know what you wanted to put into each one, or it just kind of came together?
The first one, Jill Cohen, is a kind of a book agent in our industry, and I actually met her at a design leadership retreat in Venice, and we were riding on the boats together from the airport to the hotel. And she mentioned what she does. I was like, oh, I'd love to send you, what I've done before, and maybe we can talk about it. How wonderful would it be to have a book? Again, kind of thinking I excuse me, I have no idea if that would work for me or if I have enough material and that sort of thing. And after this retreat, a couple months later, I was like, oh yeah, I was going to send that stuff to Jill. I sent her all my stuff and she called me immediately. She's like, absolutely, we're doing a book. This is super exciting. I can see all the color and the pattern that you use. And I can kind of see how it tells a story. Let's work on this. And so we worked on a presentation and presented it to Rizzoli, and they immediately said yes. So I was thrilled with that. And then went through the process of designing it with Doug Tershin, who's an amazing designer and designed it. And with my publicist at the time, Elisa Carroll, is an amazing writer. And so she wrote the book. So it was really interesting because Elisa had known me for years. And we had a great body of work, but the body of work was fairly eclectic. It was there were very different homes throughout the entire thing. My second book, I feel like, was 15 years into my career, and I shot most of the projects within like a 2-year time frame. And so there really was a consistency, and I felt like a maturity to my work as well. So I was really, really excited about a second book and sort of it being, the next level of Jay Jeffers and what that looks like, and being bold, because the book is called Be Bold, being bold, but also being sort of edited and a little bit more modern than what I'd done before and that sort of thing. So it's very fun. I would, it's a lot of work. It absolutely is so much work, but it's really fun to sort of, it's a stroll down memory lane for me.
Right.
It's like, going back and looking at things and being like, oh, I forgot about that piece of furniture. I love that. Oh yeah, we bought that Julian Huber sculpture that went on the living room. I forgot about that. That was amazing and that sort of thing. So that part of it's fun. I'm kind of getting into a place where we're finishing up all these projects, and I'm going to be shooting a bunch of projects in the spring. And I think people ask me like, are you ready to do another book? And the answer was no for a while, but I think once I get these projects shot, it'll probably be like, okay, maybe we can start.
Let's come together again.
Looking at this again, yeah. See what J 3.0 is.
There now. You go. Well, given that you're working on both coasts and there's a distinct rivalry, I guess you could say, do you see that in the design world as well, where things are happening in New York that are not happening on the West Coast and vice versa, and their own design aesthetics and definitely lifestyles, but just the way that people look to the end user, look at design?
Good question. I think I've always thought of, and I still think it's true, that New York especially is a little more dressy, for lack of a better word, in the world of design. And whether that is, modernism to a perfect point and minimalism like you've never seen it before, to maximalism and traditional and that sort of thing. And I feel like, at least in my own design, but I feel like it's very true for California and the West Coast, it is a little bit more relaxed. It is a little bit more, even, a modernist in New York may have a couple of throw pillows. A modernist in San Francisco may have a couple of throw pillows on the sofa, whereas you may not in New York. So I don't know if I would call it a rivalry, though. I think it's just a way people live and how they function through life and that sort of thing. And I think, entertaining is big on the West Coast, and we're always having parties and people over, and not that it's not big in New York, but I think people are a little bit more going out than they are staying home and that sort of thing.
Spatial reasons probably
reasons probably have a lot to do with it. Believe me, I thought about like, okay, how am I going to have a cocktail party for 50 people in my apartment in New York? I'm going to have to edit that down to 20.
Elbow to elbow. What are some of the current interior design trends that you find particularly exciting or interesting?
I'm seeing a lot of, and I usually try not to follow trends. It's funny when people ask that, I'm like, I don't know what the trends are, but I'm seeing a lot of like craft these days. I think the collaborations amongst people, like, fashion designers working with interior design and that sort of thing, I think that's super interesting. and people like, Douglas Friedman doing a line of rugs with Kyle Bunting and things like that, where it's somebody that may not be in the interior design, or is on the periphery of the interior design world, but not necessarily a designer, coming up with the different ideas and the craft of it and that sort of thing, and beautiful sculptural pieces. Carlos Otero is a ceramicist that I met early in the year at a dinner, and he was an architect for many years and then decided he was going to change everything, and is now doing these absolutely incredible ceramics, wall sculptures, but also lamps and sculptural pieces that I think are just insane. So I love seeing things like that. Jeremy Anderson is another one that was part of apparatus lighting for a while and is doing just absolutely breathtaking light fixtures these days and ceramics and things like that. So I think that's super interesting. I think that's a lot of fun.
You talk about Douglas, a guy from New York goes to Texas, your own home state.
Yes.
And loves
Martha,
it there.
no doubt.
Yeah. Do you collaborate on projects? Have you ever collaborated with other design firms on projects?
Architecture firms, yes, but not other designers that I can think of. I think the closest collaboration would be doing show houses, because you're always sort of like, what are you doing next to me and that sort of thing. But
right.
No.
So when you first go into a project and meet the client, what's the first thing you try to tell them and educate them in design and space and lifestyle, even though they might bring you a picture, I want this, and you look at it's like, no, that's not going to fit you. It's like a haircut, it's not going to go.
Yeah.
How do you work with that with a client?
I think I always start with, how do you live your life? Let's tell me about, do you have children? How many? What are their ages? That sort of thing. Are you the entertainer? Like, does everybody come to your home for all the holidays? Are you very private? Really getting to know the clients is the most important thing. And then, sometimes I'll ask the clients, how do you dress? Or if we're meeting and they're dressed, but sometimes our first meetings might be on, Zoom these days and that sort of thing. Like, do you have favorite fashion designers, or where do you travel? Where do you like to go? Are you a beach traveler? Are you a city traveler? Are you both? Do you cruise? Like, all of those kind of things. And then I think, I'm at a place in my career where it's rare that somebody says, I want this, and shows me a picture of something and expects that they're going to get that from me. Right. Usually it's like, and I tell them, I ask people to go through and find inspiration for me that they like, if they have time to do it. It's very rare that someone does it. I'm like, even if it's just like, go through my own Instagram and you can tell me I like this, I don't like this, because oftentimes hearing what they don't like is actually more helpful than what they do like. Like if somebody says, don't even think about painting my dining room yellow because I cannot stand that color, kind of a thing, then I know, okay, I won't do that. I will get clients often that want to keep certain pieces of furniture and things like that. And once in a while, a lot of times I'm like, that would look great in the guest room, and just wait for a response.
But in that corner behind the door.
But I feel like, I can't remember, it was a project a while ago, but a client said to me, Jay, the guest room is getting very full. Like, exactly. So let enough with the existing furniture pieces. But once in a while, I have to say, and usually the way I approach it with the client is that they've outgrown it. If there's a piece of furniture that someone's very attached to and they want it to be very prominent and it just doesn't fit in, my feeling is, you have brought me in for a specific reason. You're at another level in your life. You're at a different place. This is not you anymore. Right. This is what's more you is what I'm telling you to do.
This is the way it's going to go. Well, I mean, you are a professional. They're hiring you for your professional advice. So you got to listen to the doctor, as they say.
Definitely happened to me more in the early days of my career, where someone may have been like, I would like you to do this for me. And I would sort of approach it as like, okay, how can I do my version of that for them? Because, all of us designers have had some clients say, I just stayed at the Four Seasons in blank, and I want my house to look like that, or I want my bedroom to be like exactly like that. And sort of like, okay, how can we have, an interesting non-hospitality feeling Four Seasons bedroom for this client?
Right. Does sustainability play an important factor in your design?
I'd like to say yes. I think that I don't probably pay enough attention to it as I should. And in our industry, I continue to try to educate myself on it. My biggest thing in terms of sustainability is I love to use antiques and vintage pieces and reuse and that sort of thing. I love antique rugs. And so we try to do that. I will say many years ago, I had a few clients that were very interested in designing their home in a sustainable way. And a lot of times, we would show fabrics and things like that that were a little more sustainably correct. And they just weren't of the caliber that my clients really wanted their home to be. So we would look for other ways of doing that. I think that that's changing, daily and annually now. And there are so many other products, rugs made of bamboo and that sort of thing that have just this amazing silky quality and that. So try to be a part of it and educate myself on it. Probably.
Right. Are there any favorite design materials or elements that you consistently try to incorporate into your design that are your go-tos?
Another good question. I'm as I mentioned before, fabrics are a big thing for me. So I'm into the hand and the weight and the feel. And I feel like that's always the place to spend money if you need to. I don't mind buying a cheap piece of furniture if it's going to be like a vintage chair or something at a flea market and then put like a fabulous fabric on it. I think that's fun and interesting and elevates the piece and that sort of thing. I think using antiques and vintage furniture and accessories and art and that sort of thing is the consistency through my work. Materials, I try to, stay up on what's new and different and that sort of thing. But also not be so trendy and so like it's of the moment or of a moment, because I always think to myself like, oh, in a few years, is somebody going to be like, oh, that bathroom is very, 2023, try to be more classic. I try to be a little bit more classic, but still have some fun with materials, because really like, in 10 years, probably most of my clients will either have moved or they're ready to remodel it anyways. But I don't want that to happen in 3 years where they're like, oh, I'm sick of this, or this is so trendy, or I'm seeing what you did for me everywhere else. Like that's the last thing I want to hear.
So what are some of the projects you're currently working on?
I'm working on, and I'm finishing it up at the beginning of next year, probably my longest project to date. I think we're in year 6, but this is a beautiful estate in Carmel Valley in a development called the Santa Lucia Preserve, which I think is something like 20,000 acres of preserved land, and there are also home sites on it. And so we're building for these clients a beautiful home, guest house. They're also, she loves horses, so there's a stable as well. I'm working with Richard Beard Architects here in San Francisco, and it's one of those projects that contractors great, clients are absolutely wonderful. This is project number 2 for us, for them. Architect great, it just kind of everything fell into place there. It's been a wonderful project, and we did it from the ground up and kind of started out. There's a stone building that's the great room, but I wanted that to feel like it's been there for 100 years. And then we kind of built the rest of the property off of it. So it's been really fun. That's been great. Working on a home here in San Francisco for 2 brothers. They bought a 2-unit building, and it's a historic building, brick building in Pacific Heights. And the way that we've it's been a gut renovation, but the way we renovated both units is the beginning, it stays much more in the traditional state with the crown moldings and things like that. And as you walk down towards the back of the house where the primary bedroom and bathroom is at the very back of the apartment. It's both of them are one level. It gets more modern as you go. So that's been a lot of fun and fun to work for two brothers who have, very distinct, different tastes. A lot of the materials are similar, but the decoration is quite different. That's been a lot of fun.
So the amount of projects that you have, do you limit the amount of projects you take on each year, or you just say yes to a lot?
I do say yes to a lot. It's hard to, if it's an interesting project, it's hard to say no, but I also think about, okay, where are we in the state of other projects? Like, it's very hard to sort of take 3 new projects on at the same time kind of thing. And but it also depends on those projects too. Like, I love a project that's remodel and materials and designing, kitchen, bathroom layouts, that sort of thing. But I also love when someone calls me and says, I just bought a house. I don't want to do anything to it but decorate. That's when I'm like, okay, yes, we can absolutely do that. Chances are we will probably do some sort of remodeling to it as well, unfortunately, because I just got to get those bones right. But it totally depends. I think I probably take on way too many things. But, if it's a good, exciting project, it's hard to say no.
Oh, it shows that you love what you do. So I mean, that's an important factor. Given that you have New York and San Francisco now, are you doing work between the two as well nationally?
Between the two, not right now. I've got everything that we're working on right now is Bay Area. It's it comes and goes. For a few years ago, I was working on a project in Aspen and Dallas and Montana and San Francisco. I've done projects in Florida and New York. So it really just depends. I will go wherever anybody wants me to go, for sure. Feel free. Call me up.
Do you battle yourself in your own environments of changing things out? Or are you pretty much solid in your home environment?
Another good question. I do change things up. And I think what I do more is I sell things and then buy something new and then try to literally start over. Like I'm coming to you from my apartment in San Francisco that I've been here since 2018, and I've done some things to it to kind of spruce it up. But literally in the last 6 months, I've been like, I think I need something totally new. Like I've been thinking, like, do I remodel this? I'm like, maybe I need something totally new in a different neighborhood, in a different area, that sort of thing. I had a home in St. Helena and the Napa Valley for many years and loved living there. And I just sold that this year, which I wasn't planning on selling it. I just got a call from an agent who was like, are you interested in selling your house? And of course I said no. And then, somebody really wanted it. So of course I said yes.
It made sense.
And I'm like, I sold it right at the beginning of summer. And then I was like, okay, I really wish I had done this in the fall. But although the fall is beautiful there too. But, so I'm excited about a new venture someplace else, whether that be, in Sonoma or somewhere else.
Well, speaking of new ventures, what else is on your plate? What else is ahead for you?
New York is going to be the big focus for next year, and photographing projects and that sort of thing. I don't have. I did a project. I did a line for Arteriors. I've done 3 different lines for them. My last one came out last year, so we're kind of good on that. So I don't really have any sort of products coming out that I'm thinking about. I'm kind of enjoying the, going the New York, San Francisco back and forth kind of thing right now. Establishing myself a little bit more in New York, enjoying my time there, having fun in San Francisco, getting these projects done. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Do you have any advice you would give to aspiring interior designers that want to get started in this career, in this field?
Oh, let's see. What advice would I give them? I think I always tell people, if they don't have, these days, social media, I think, is so important in terms of what you're doing. and or what you love. It doesn't necessarily have to be like what you're designing. And I always tell young people, I will, if we're hiring somebody, I will look at their Instagram. And if there's not a lot of design inspiration, I really question that. Like, how are you not posting about design? And I think it's okay, and I've told people this, I think it's okay to post other people's work. Just make sure you give them credit. Like, I love this living room that Jay Jeffers did or something like that, I think getting yourself out there is the most important thing, and taking some risk and having fun. I mean, when I started doing this, I probably was a few years too young to really go out on my own. In fact, the first 5 years I was like, petrified that I was going to make a mistake, or I was going to do something drastically wrong that was very expensive and I was going to have to pay for it or things like that. But I think that made me so anal retentive, like perfectionist about everything that I did. And it was fun to sort of take some risks, and I would do anything. If somebody called me and said, can you do my bedroom, or can you help me pick paint colors? I would do it all. So that's something else I would suggest to people. Like, if you're going out on your own, if you haven't worked for somebody, first advice would be work for somebody, learn the ropes of interior.
Get your feet wet.
Get your feet wet. I always tell people work for a small firm, because you're probably going to get your feet wet in doing more things, versus a really big firm. You probably will be put in a place where you're doing one thing. Now, on the flip side of that, you'll probably be working for some really incredible clients for a really big firm, for those big firms out there. But I think a smaller firm, you really get to learn a lot more and be involved in a lot more, and that sort of thing. And then if you're going out on your own, don't be afraid to take any kind of job that you learn from.
Right. Just say yes.
Just say yes.
Is there a particular project that you can think of that actually influenced you in your thought process and design aesthetics?
Many years ago, this was probably, it's in my first book, so it was probably 15 years ago. We did a complete gut remodel for a family in San Francisco. They were Indian, and they wanted their home to reflect their cultural heritage, but not feel like you were walking into an Indian home. And they had a beautiful collection of modern Indian art that they had collected. And so we did a lot of really beautiful custom work for them in water jet cut marble and carvings and things like that were very influential. And it was a study in color and texture. One of the rooms we were doing was a billiards room. It was sort of like, almost like a man cave kind of feeling. And I remember with my senior designer at the time, we were pulling together schemes, and I was pulling together, a very sort of quote unquote masculine scheme that were blues and grays and things like that. And she said to me, she was like, they're never going to pick this. I was like, why? It's beautiful. It's sumptuous. It's gorgeous. Like, they are pink and greens and oranges and vibrant colors. And so we did this whole pink scheme for this man cave, and they did not even look at the blue. And it was sort of this, it was a light bulb and an aha moment in my head that, like, there was, in their culture, there was not this masculine, feminine view towards colors. It was more of the vibrancy and the life and the energy that the room gave you in these colors. So that was definitely an education for me.
Is there a particular project in your past you're like, never again?
Sure.
Why is that, sir?
I mean, I know immediately yes, but now I have to think of one. Usually those are a little bit of a situation of it wasn't a right fit with the client, and I'm saying that very diplomatically, but and it's not that the client was, well, I've had nightmare clients that I don't work with anymore and that I'm very happy not to, but also, I've done projects where it just wasn't a fit. It just wasn't a fit. It wasn't the right thing. And luckily, either they noticed it and they told me, or I noticed it and I told them before we got to a place where we couldn't really turn back.
I think that's a good thing for individuals that are early in their career about interior design. You can fire a client.
Yeah.
That does happen. You can fire a client.
It's funny when I do get together with my designer friends and we talk about, our careers or things like that. You always talk about that client that did not work out, and we all saw the red flags. We're all
Right.
like, we saw the red flags, but you also see dollar signs. We also think, we are also psychologists. I think if you are successful in the interior design world, you really like the part of getting into the client's heads and sort of like, if it's a couple, learning about what both of them are into and what they like and what their yes and no buttons are going to be, how you're going to meld their styles together, all those things. Like, I enjoy that part of it. And if you don't enjoy that, you probably have gone into some other field, whether it be furniture design, something creative within the industry, but not where you have residential interior design clients.
It's very intimate too.
Yeah. I forgot my point. I had a point, but now I forgot what it was. Maybe I'll come back.
Technology is advancing so rapidly. How do you see emerging technologies influencing the future of interior design and how it's being applied?
I mean, it's everywhere, obviously. The one thing I haven't really started to study that I'm super interested in how it's going to affect our world is AI, of course, and ChatGPT and all of those things. And how it's going to change how we design or how we present, or, how small projects versus large projects are handled and that sort of thing. I think there's so much that can be done to enhance our careers. I think over the years, people have thought like, oh gosh, when RH started opening up showrooms and having designers, and people were like, oh God, everyone's going to go to RH. I can't believe this. All of our clients are going to go there. It's like, no, they're not.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're not. People started opening showrooms up so it's not to the trade anymore. Some of the showrooms people can come in and purchase, and everyone's like up in arms and like, all of our clients are going to go away. No, I think we just learned how to work with these people and with these organizations and things like that. So I think that's a part of it. I don't know what other, like the other technologies and things are just home technology. I feel like it's getting less and simpler and things like that. People are kind of shying away from it, don't want all the bells and whistles that you like have to call a technician to turn on a TV, or when your light fixture doesn't work, you don't know what to do, kind of thing. I feel like people are kind of starting to back off a little bit, which I think is kind of interesting. But yeah,
it hasn't made our lives all that easier. Sometimes, you have to take a full class of how to operate something.
And then you're on the phone with somebody for 2 hours and you're like, Argh!
Yeah, exactly. This is not easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the J. Jeffers design world, what is a project you really want to do that you just haven't done yet? Be it hospitality, a cruise ship. I don't know.
Yeah. I haven't done a plane, so I think doing a plane would be fun. And super interesting, and fascinating. I would love to do more hospitality work. The only hotel I've done is my own. And I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I've always loved hotels. I take a tape measure with me whenever I'm staying in a hotel, and I usually I have a log in my phone of like, what's successful and what's not, the depth of the closets, how big the nightstands were, like all kinds of things. So I would love to do more hospitality work, and I really loved doing the hotel and sort of getting into the head of someone that's staying there and experiencing it, and where they're sitting and where they're sleeping and how they unpack, all those things I think is really fascinating. So I'd love to do more of that. I really enjoy 25 years later. I still really enjoy the residential side of it. I think it's just fun and wonderful. Haven't done a house in the Hamptons yet, so would love to do, a beautiful home in the Hamptons. I haven't, I always say I'd love to do an apartment in Paris, but I really would do an apartment anywhere if it's a chic, beautiful apartment.
Right.
But a plane would be fun. Never done a cruise ship. I don't really think I have an interest in doing a cruise ship, but who knows? I wouldn't say no if somebody called me.
Or maybe just a big mini yacht.
Absolutely. Mini yacht would be fun.
So the artwork that's behind you, is this pieces that you've actually curated or you actually painted?
Not painted. I am not much of a painter. So no, these are things that I've collected over the years. It's funny because sometimes things are like this one that you see right behind me. It's painted by a friend of mine, but it's a hummingbird, which hummingbirds remind me of my grandmother. But it's a piece that I took out to a client's, and she ended up not buying, and I took it and put it in my car and took it home with me and bought it instead. So there are a few pieces like that throughout, but I've had my apartment in San Francisco is literally filled wall to wall with art right now because everything that came out of my house in Napa is now hanging in my 1,000 square foot apartment in San Francisco. So it's literally wall to wall art right now, which is kind of fun.
You don't have a guest room to stick stuff?
No guest room. No. I sized down in San Francisco when I bought the place in Napa. So.
Well, Mr. Jay Jeffers, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Is there anything else you want to add and share with us?
No, I think we covered it all. This was great.
Well,
thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's been an honor, and thank you again for taking the time to give us a little chat.
Sure thing.
Well, we will say goodbye and see you soon.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, Jay.